Okay, so you mentioned going to a completely different style throttle body. I'm assuming you mean that you currently have the early style, which is the 85 to 88 with the sort of externally mounted IACV, and you're going to do the conversion to the later style, which is the 88 to 95 that has the sort of more integral IACV on the throttle body. So I'll explain what you need to know about these attachment points, which is essentially not much. But I will just describe, and sorry, I tried to do this on the vehicle, but because all of this stuff is removed from my vehicle, it was very difficult to try to explain. So I did some bad drawings. So to take the IACV off, you unbolt the two bolts. This sits kind of under and to the passenger side of your throttle body and intake plenum. You unbolt these two bolts. You have an air hose that goes from the bottom of your throttle body and runs to the front of your IACV. Then you have an air hose that runs from the back of the IACV underneath your intake plenum and up around the side. So you would remove the hose here from the throttle body, remove the hose here from the side of the plenum, take a vacuum cap and cap this off. It was like, I think, a 3/4 inch with a 5/8 inch inner diameter. Cap it off, cap it off. Then you'll be left with two coolant hoses. One goes from the bottom of the throttle body to the side of the IACV. You have another coolant hose that goes from the side of the IACV underneath your intake over to the side of your engine. So you would remove the hose from the throttle body connection and then remove the hose from the side of your engine and be prepared for coolant to come out. Then you have a plug at the back that you just unplug the plug from the back of the valve and pull the valve out. By this point, you should be able to pull the valve out. All your connections are detached. Leave the plug that's attached to the harness dangling. Just leave it there. You don't cap it off, you don't cut it off, you just forget it ever existed. And then you would cap the coolant hose here, again with just a vacuum cap, and the side of the engine one with a vacuum cap. And once you get your new setup, you're going to have a whole new throttle body and a whole new upper intake plenum. In order to do the early to the late swap, you have to change out the plenum too, from what I understand. Again, I don't have this style IACV, so I'm not super familiar with it, but from what I understand, there's no electrical connection to it and there's no air hose connection to it. It's actuated solely by coolant, so you have two coolant passages. Again, from what I understand, one comes off the bottom of the throttle body and runs to a hose that connects somewhere on or near your thermostat housing. And then there's another hose that comes down and connects over to the side of your engine. I'm assuming it's the same connection. So what you would do is once you get all your equipment for your new setup, you attach it, and then once you figure out where your coolant hoses are going, which again, there's only two of them, so it's quite a bit simpler, you just figure out, are you using the same connection that you used on this one? If so, then just uncap it and connect your coolant hose. If for whatever reason you're using a different passageway, you would just, again, keep this one capped off, maybe put some RTV inside the cap and, squish it on there, or maybe put a hose clamp around it just to secure it really well. Because you don't want, if this is just going to be a dead connection now, you don't want that leaking coolant. So essentially, if you're worried about which parts to cap off and how you cap it off, and you're going to a completely different throttle body configuration, you don't have to worry about capping off any of this stuff. And you don't have to worry about capping this off, because you're going to have a new throttle body that will not have these connection points, and you're going to have a new upper intake plenum that may or may not have this connection point. If it has this connection point and you're not going to use it for anything, just cap it off. So really the only thing that you want to worry about is the one that goes to the engine. You just cap that off. All of the rest of this stuff in this picture, once you put on a new throttle body, is going to disappear. So you don't have to worry about how to cap off anything. If that makes sense, I hope it does. If you're doing something totally different that I've never heard of, you're not going from the early to the late, you have some other fancy aftermarket throttle body that you're going to be using, I would assume that the same principle still applies. The only thing that you would have to worry about between taking off the old style and putting on your new configuration is this single coolant passage here. If you're going to use it, then hook it up to whatever it hooks up to. If you're not going to use it, cap it off. But either way, again, you still don't have to worry about any of this other stuff on this particular throttle body because you're getting rid of it.